Goalie masks are all about putting up a tough front. It's not just their protective shell and cage. Their wild paint jobs are designed to intimidate. Incredibly, back in the 1960s, the first masked goalies were ridiculed by fans who viewed the masks as a sign of weakness. It was a case of adding insult to injury. Today, these masks allow the goaltender to play it safe, so they're far less likely to be sidelined by a serious injury. They start with a plaster mold of an average Joe. They plug the mouth hole with plasticine. This ensures that the mold won't spring any leaks while they fill it with plaster of Paris. They let it dry for half an hour. Then they pull off the initial mold to reveal the solid impression. They press plasticine onto strategic areas. This mimics the foam safety guards that cushion every mask. The final result is called a plug, and it will be used to make a two-part compression mold. After applying a black sealer, they polish it smooth, eliminating imperfections that would be visible on the mold they're going to make from it. Over at another station, a worker in protective garb unrolls fiberglass fabric. He cuts and layers sheets of it, then draws patterns onto the top one, spacing the shapes closely together to minimize waste. The goal is to score 100 goalie masks from one roll of material. Using a disc cutter, he slices through 25 layers of the fiberglass fabric. Then he stacks various composite fabrics, several of the fiberglass one and patches of Kevlar for reinforcement. Kevlar can absorb so much impact, it's also used to make bulletproof vests. He places more fabric over the Kevlar. He spreads an epoxy resin onto each layer. He drapes them over a mold that's been made from the plug and smooths the material to eliminate air pockets as he continues to layer and glue. He's laminating all the pieces together to form one. He trims away the ragged edges and then places the inside portion of the mold into the outside one. The wet fabric is now sandwiched between two mold pieces. He lowers a 1-ton press to compress the layers of fabric as the resins between them continue to form a bond. He adds some clamps to keep things tight. After 20 minutes, he pries the laminated fiberglass shell out of the mold. This is one very tough shell. It's the raw form of a goalie mask, but it still needs a lot of work. So it's over to the trimming and grinding station. He places a trim jig over the shell. Using a high-speed router, he cuts an opening for the cage. He slices off the flash with a disc grinder. And then he sands and grinds the edges. He drills holes to attach various fasteners. Then he carves out larger holes for ventilation and to reduce the mask's weight. Coming up next, watch as the paint pros go to work on these shells. They prep the mask by roughing it up with an orbital sander. Then they pour a sealer into a container. The technician wears a charcoal respirator because the emissions are toxic. He adds the activator solution and a reactive reducer and stirs the sealer together. Then he sprays the sealer mix onto the masks. The finish will cure and harden as the chemicals in it generate their own heat. Next, this system stirs up some hot hues automotive paint as the technician sprays a vivid gold base coat onto the masks. Computer graphics created with SignLab software are sent to a plotter that cuts out adhesive vinyl paint masks. He pulls away unneeded vinyl around the stencil, a process called weeding. Then he presses the vinyl stencils against the goalie mask and peels off the paper backing. Applying the stencil to the crown is tricky because the surface is curved with ridges, so it doesn't lay flat. He lifts and cuts the pattern with a utility knife and then straightens it out. This mask is starting to look pretty impressive. But they cover the whole thing with white paint. It's a temporary cover-up. This process is all about layering patterns and color. They apply more vinyl shapes. And then, using a pressurized paint system, they spray everything bright red. Next, an artist airbrushes some shadowing onto the now barely visible image of a leaf. He peels away some of the paint mask vinyl. And it's time for a really neat effect. He sprinkles the surface of the mask with water. Then he mists it with paint, and the water droplets catch the paint. He blasts it with a heat gun. The water evaporates, but the paint dries in droplet form, giving the mask a frosty look. He airbrushes a drop shadow around some lettering, dispensing with the usual safety gloves for this detail work. And now all is revealed as he peels away the vinyl. The goalie mask is showing its true colors. But wait, a little touch-up job is needed. He traces the pattern onto see-through paper and then transfers it onto Bristol board. He cuts it out with a utility knife. Then he aligns it with the shape on the mask and precisely airbrushes around it to make the smudge disappear. With the final clear coat, this mask has visual impact. It makes a colorful statement. And now it's time to put all the pieces together. She screws on the stainless steel cage and applies a little glue to reinforce the adhesive-backed foam cushioning. She attaches the sweatband with Velcro so it can be removed and washed. And then she moves on to the backplate. She threads the harness through the backplate to the front of the mask to attach them. The harness is elastic, so it gives the mask some flexibility. Now it's ready for some ice time. And with their various custom paint jobs, these masks all say the puck stops here.